Hey gang, it is Wednesday. That means it's hump day. I am excited. That means it's time for an after work toddy. Tonight it's a little bit of white wine again, a little Pinot Grigio. Hope you're all having a great week. And welcome to Dentists in the Know, your backstage pass for current trends, politics, and education in the dental world. It is live, and as always, it's over your favorite cocktail or any beverage of your choice. As always, I am joined by my besties, Dr. Jennifer Bell and Dr. Chad Duplantis. And as you know, we are all practicing dentists. We are all business owners and we are all educators. And guess what our job is? It's to bring all of you in the know.
So let's get to it, guys. A little public service announcement, as we like to do here at Dinks. Please don't practice illegal dentistry at a La Quinta Inn. Because unfortunately, this one gentleman did and eventually got busted. And I'm reading this news article. It's in Danbury, Connecticut. And this gentleman was practicing dentistry in the La Quinta Hotel. And he had a chair, he had prescriptions, he had equipment, he had all kinds of stuff. And I got to be honest, for a second, I'm thinking, what does this look like? One, how long has the maid service not been popping into this room? Like, how long has he had the do not disturb sign out? And then, I mean, you know what we do for a living. You know what it takes to operate a dental practice on a daily basis. And I'm not saying he had like an OSHA manual in the front part of as you walked into the La Quinta Hotel, the OSHA manual was in the bathroom. But I'm just thinking general equipment. What would that really look like? And apparently at least had some in there. Anyway, this gentleman was finally busted. The police showed up. They arrested him for practicing without a license and also for owning illegal prescription drugs. But they actually walked in as a guy was walking out with gauze in his mouth, who probably had just had an extraction completed by said gentleman. So, you know, if you're going to run your illegal dental office, maybe don't do it at a hotel. Is that the PSA? That's probably not the one I should be saying. Anywho, the HPI statistics came out from the ADA for March. We haven't really talked much about that. I think the most important piece of information that came out of that, and frankly has been included in a lot of the information that I've seen coming out of the government as well, is that we continue to see a drop of healthcare providers. Another 1,500 hygienists left the workforce in March, at least reported through HPI. So that's a small subset of practitioners that are continuing to provide data to the ADA. So that's 1,500 hygienists out of that subset. So if that's 1% or 2% of dentists that are reporting statistics to the ADA, there probably is an amplification of that data. Certainly, I'm experiencing that in my own community as well. So we're continuing to see individuals generally leaving the workforce. And frankly, I was driving here today and was listening to the radio, and a TSA advertisement came on hiring employees, and they could go to an orientation and then be a TSA agent. That was pretty much the criteria, and a U.S. citizen, starting at $18.50 an hour with a $2,000 signing bonus. And I don't know about your area, but in my area, that's actually a fairly competitive salary for early young DA1s, early young DA2s, and certainly administrative staff as well. So again, we're continuing to compete with large corporations to draw talent. We're not just competing with other dental offices like we were 15 years ago. So I think it's an interesting change in the dynamic as we move forward. One of the things that we talked about last week was that starting April 1, the emergency lift occurred for COVID-19. Now, why does this affect us as dentists? Well, we talked a little bit about some of the changes that may happen on a local basis and tourism, et cetera. But in addition, what I was unaware of, but sought more information for you all to bring tonight, was that a lot of Medicaid funding will be pulled as well. Why is that? Because during the COVID-19 emergency status, states were not allowed to drop individuals from the Medicaid roll. So if you happen to be a clinician who is participating in taking Medicaid, I think probably a more arduous practice of verifying benefit is going to be required over the next 6 to 18 months, probably, as individuals will be rolled off of the Medicaid roll, if you will, because of the lift of that emergency status. There were specific states that are going to be the hardest hit as predicted. It was Hawaii, Wyoming, Indiana, Illinois, and Florida. And that's 14 million patients coming off of the Medicaid roll in across the US because of that lift. So I think it's definitely worth noting there may be an access to care issue. Emergency departments may see a rise in visits. All of these things sort of get interconnected together. And with that, that's the news.
We have a guest tonight who is not just an amazing COIS trained dentist, but an AACD accredited dentist. And we're going to let JB introduce her. But all I could think is she really is going to talk a lot about digital dentistry and bridging that gap. So my guess is she doesn't have a whole lot of paper in her office.
No, probably not.
All right. Well, JB, why don't you introduce our guest?
I would love to. So let's go back in time a little bit. I happened to be fortunate enough to get exocad in my office, and I was scanning a bunch and trying to figure all this out. And I was hearing through the grapevine about this fantastic dentist out of Florida who had magically put all these pieces of the puzzle together, which was fantastic because I'm fumbling through all of this software and I can't make any of it do what I want it to do. And I was really lucky to have like one of the most impactful 40-minute conversations with an individual, because what I got from that, I'm sure Bio has all these amazing things that she's accomplished, and she has. But much like you, Jeff, talking to someone who was incredibly passionate about what they were doing, that they were self-taught, that they sought that information, like it became something that they wanted to get better at. And then once they got rolling into it, they couldn't help but continue to grow in the evolution of that information. And then she was starting to take it to other doctors to say, you know what, not for me to keep in a notebook on the shelf in my office, but for me to teach other doctors to be able to be successful and not have to go through the same painstaking process that I went through to get good at this software. And that was the impact that I had in that conversation that evening. And I hung up the phone and I thought, that girl, number one, is going places. And number two, is such a testament to who we are as doctors, scrappy, working hard, and trying to be really good at what we do for our patients. And our patients don't see it or know. They have no idea what we're doing when they're not in the operatory and the lights are out and we're in our back room fumbling with whatever. So, you know, that's my own fangirl story of having my first encounter with Diana. And I'm just super excited to have her on here tonight because I want other folks to hear her passion about what she's doing. I want to hear more about her journey, her accreditation with the Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry, and all the wonderful things that she's accomplished, but how she really is a voice for general dentists out there and championing being able to take digital dentistry into their hands and making things better and more efficient for the practice and for the patient. So without further ado, Diana, I'm so glad you're here.
The scrappy dentist. I've never heard a dentist refer to as scrappy.
I actually get that tattooed on me now. I feel like that's the best description I have.
It's really a compliment because I love that. Like solving a problem, seeing a problem and saying, you know what, I don't, you know what, Chad, you should be scrappy about sticky notes. You should solve this problem.
Yes, please, with the sticky notes. We have a no sticky notes in our office. We really it's not that I love paper, I guess, but not in our office. We kind of have found a solution for anything that would require paper. Like even the way we communicate, like we have this like interoperatory communication where we just buzz each other. Like it gets lost, so But I want to say Digilog, as much as everybody thinks I've like jumped into some sort of metaverse and like I don't have like no touch with reality, I still do believe there's some things that are more accurate if done in the analog realm versus digital. So, but you have to know enough to play the game, right? So you have to figure out what is, and what makes sense for your practice. What makes sense for my practice, it may not, that my workflow may not work for yours, so you kind of have to find the sweet spot with digital that makes sense in your office. So it was a learning curve. It was like many sad nights of it. I think like the problem I had with the whole journey or in the beginning is nobody wanted to help. Not even like the software company, not even labs that were using it efficiently. They didn't want dentists. There's a lot of big corporations that are kind of up against us that don't want dentists to learn how to do their own wax ups because they love the outsourcing. They're paid per patient for outsourcing. So what is the benefit for the dentist to just get this software and, not pay per patient to them? So I think that's kind of a hard thing. But the truth is, like, it's actually increased the production for my lab. People say, oh, you're taking away from your lab. No, like my ceramist is super busy now because I'm able to turn these cases very quickly to her. I'm not waiting 3 weeks for, a patient to maybe say yes to a wax up, that even just getting them to say yes to a wax up, to put the money down to pay for a wax up was a slough off for me. About half of them were like, oh, I'll think about it. It's $1,500 for wax up. I don't know. But now I don't even charge for the wax up. At my practice, I do it in my consultation appointment. And so she's actually like 4 times busier than when she had to do the wax ups herself. So, that's kind of the thing, but I think the reality of it is if you're not getting into the digital game now in dentistry, you might feel a little bit left behind at some point. Like you guys were saying, you were able to get your CT scans to each other, and we, in Fort Lauderdale, you get a lot of snowbirds, you get a lot of patients who are always traveling, and we're always calling the dentist. Do you have do you have an intraoral scan of them, or do you have their pre-existing tooth, a scan of that? I can just replicate that for them into the crown, things like that. And it seems to me, and I'm seeing it even in the courses, more and more dentists already have the scanners now. A lot of them are starting to get the printers, and then they realize like, well, I have the scanner, it's pretty plug and play, and I have the printer, it's plug and play. And now I'm just waiting for the middle part, which is the design. And sometimes they don't want to wait anymore, like they really want to just conquer that in-house. So, but I definitely think it's now in 2023, and the software has been super good about listening to the dentist and what we want. I think it's probably like an MVP at my practice now. I mean, it's everyday dentistry for me. I'm using it, and it's a big benefit to my patients, and I pass that savings on to my patients. We have a lot of dentists that come to our course and they say, well, I'm going to charge double for the wax up because if I have to use it on my time instead of the labs. And I just feel I don't charge for the wax ups. And I just think in dentistry, if you do the right thing, the dentistry will come, the patients will come. So for me at my office, I don't charge for the wax ups. Yes, it's my time, but it's also a chance for me to spend time with the case, and figure out the nuances of the design.
Well, let's talk about your journey. So you're a dentist in Florida. Mm-hmm. You've been doing cosmetic dentistry for a while. Yeah.
Actually, you know what? I'll be honest with you. I practiced in Manhattan before I moved to before I practiced in Fort Lauderdale. I practiced in Manhattan. I was not really a cosmetic dentist. I was the shade A1, shade A2 dentist to the lab. Cosmetic dentistry for me happened very quick. My first exposure to cosmetic dentistry was in 2018 in the fall when I went to Adamo's. His first Impress course was a 1-day course. And that was my first time I'd even played with enamel and dentin shades. Like that's how behind I was. And I've been practicing now for 12 years, And so that spring, Adamo and I are close friends. And that spring I was telling him I'm getting so burned out with CE. I feel like I've done it all. I'm getting really burned out. And he's like, why don't you do accreditation? And I'm like, what's accreditation? I wasn't even a member of the ACD yet. This was in 2019. And I didn't even know anything about the accreditation process. And he had told me this a week before the conference. I wasn't even signed up to go. So I had studied, I'm a pretty studious person. I studied that week. I flew into the conference. I took the written exam and then off I went. So my thing is, if I could do it, in this short time frame, you guys are already way ahead of me. I didn't even have a scanner when I got into digital. So Yeah, I actually started cosmetic dentistry, I guess you would say, just like 3 years ago. So that's
Well, you
and
were
I was
doing it all along to some extent, but it just sort
not
of
well, very
well,
embarrassing dentistry.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm humbly in
Yeah.
a very similar place as to where you were in 2019, and now you take a photo and you're like, it's just shit, like all of it,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I
I mean,
can't.
all my cases look like before photos. I'll tell
Yes.
you what. Like, oh,
I now
wait-
lecture and
wait a
say, I mean,
second.
I'm not a fellow accredited in the AACD, but this is what I did. You know, like
Yeah.
it comes with a big parentheses. Like,
yeah, yeah.
So wait a second. You started this journey in what, 2019?
Yeah.
And I have another journey question for you in a second that's unrelated to this, but you're already accredited
Yeah.
and you've completed COIS.
Mhm. Which I also started in I don't know, 2019 was like a kick in the ass for me because I started accreditation, I started COIS, and then probably about later on at that year is when I started exocad. But I think my thing is
And she won a Nobel Peace Prize that year
yeah,
too.
yeah.
Yeah, I can only imagine. That's pretty
Oh,
damn
and
impressive.
I became a lip artist on the side, which was
Yeah.
totally not something I even asked for. But then I got sponsored by like makeup companies.
That's really damn impressive. My hat's off to you. Congratulations
But
on
yeah,
that.
no, I mean the accreditation, and Adamo can attest to this, but like that, I basically lived and breathed it for a good year and a half to get through the process. I mean, I was there on the weekends, evenings. I opened up the practice on Fridays for my accreditation cases. Like I think the thing is, it's kind of like Jen, you said, and how John always says, once you know better, you want to do better. And that's how I felt. Like once I started to like understand like what aesthetic dentistry was and like what they were looking for and the criteria, like I wanted to see if I could take a case to that. And I could and I kept pushing. And, Dom and I got in a lot of fights because a lot of the big issue with accreditation is case selection. My problem is in my practice, at the beginning, it was a pretty elderly practice. So I don't get these ideal cases at my practice. They all are really heavily restored already as it is. And I've fought him on like a lot of these cases. I was like, listen, like I'm not going to get these 20-year-olds popping in my office that have just like one broken tooth and everything is pristine. I'm not seeing that, I don't do A1 dentistry here. I have to do like D4 at my practice. So like, I was like, I don't feel, and I felt so, but he's like, well, if you can do A1, you should be able to do for you. It's understanding composite and it's understanding shading. And that's what you need to understand. Maybe that's what you're not understanding. And so that's kind of what I honed in on. And it was like a big project for my practice. Everyone in my practice knew the 5 case types. My hygienist knew what they were. My assistants knew what they were. So that if a patient even was walking down the street, they would be like, oh, I saw a case type 2 at Home Depot. My parents knew what they were. So I talked to my specialist. I said, hey, listen, if you guys get a patient with a broken tooth, the front tooth, like my surgeons, because they'll get a lot of people that go straight in first. So I was really like aggressive on it because I just wanted to see if I could do it. And I felt like I was doing really good dentistry for my patients at that point. I was doing better dentistry. And I even redid one of my bondings, my case type 4, which is the direct composite. My before photo was the bonding I did on the patient a year before, And so I redid it as my case type because I was like, this is not good. And I tell my patient, like, listen, I didn't know better. 2018 Diana was not a good version of herself. I was like, let me redo this for you. And I tell them, what I was going through in the process. So you have to be humble. And I think that's the problem is some people come into this with thin skin and thick egos, and you'll just never get through accreditation with that mindset. So, yeah.
Yep.
And
Man, how much of that do you accredit to? So we had, all of this happened really during the COVID break when, a lot of us took a little time to be introspective and to kind of rethink our careers and rethink what we're doing. So how much did that play into everything that you were able to do, given the fact that it was probably easier to take some extra time and find some of these paths?
Yeah, I think a lot of this, it was a lot of things happening at once. I had bought in this practice and I still had the owner there as my associate. And he is as phenomenal of a clinician as he is humble, but he was a pinky dentist and he really believed in continued education. So he said, anytime you leave for COIS, I will cover, don't worry, just go. He's like, please take, I had already done Dawson a long time ago, but it was like during residency and it didn't really click as much. So he was a big proponent of me going to COIS. So I would do that. I mean, I finished COIS pretty quick. I did it in about like a year, a little bit over a year. But I felt like I was in Seattle every month, you know, and then to keep myself on that track, I bought Oryx into our office. So I could have a systems to keep me on track with, you know, the questions and the dental history and the medical history intake form. So that kept me like consistently thinking in that trained, you know, mindset. And the same thing with accreditation, I had kind of started right before COVID. Actually, I would say COVID was a big problem for me because we had to cancel a submission cycle for COVID because they weren't meeting. And I had cases that I was like I had patients in temps during during COVID. So that wasn't it. But the biggest player that happened because of COVID was the digital. Our practice was in a decline. I had so many holes in my schedule because, again, our patients are elderly. They were very scared to come to the office, and nobody was doing cosmetic dentistry at that time. And I was doing my accreditation cases for free just to get them, you know, in. And on top of that, I have to pay for the wax ups. And I just, you know, like the first time I got a digital print wax up instead of a hand wax, I did call the lab and I said, like, I feel cheated. Like, this is not a hand wax. Like, the only reason I'm sending out wax is because I can't hand wax. What is this BS on my desk? And that they were the ones who first mentioned the word exocad to me. Before that, I have never heard of even that software before. And I didn't have a scanner at my office yet. I didn't have a printer. I didn't have the money for it, you know? So I called exocad and I asked them, can I buy this software? And they asked me, what lab am I? And I said, I'm not, I'm a dentist. And they said, well, you know, dentists don't really buy this software. You know, it's a lab software. It's pretty comprehensive. And I said, well, I'm going to buy it because I'm stubborn and I'm an idiot too, because then I had to find out I had to get a scanner and a printer. I went on eBay. I found a printer for $500 and I was able to finance a scanner. And I plugged in my USB that my software came on, and I thought, like, I don't know, I was thinking like the Microsoft Word paperclip guy would pop up and be like, hey, let me walk you through exocad and show you how it works, or like something. Like, I didn't even know what it was. I thought it was like you send in like a picture and then it just comes up with, like, you know, I guess I was thinking I was going to outsource it. I don't know what I thought, but nothing happens when you plug in an exocad software to your computer. Nothing. And I called the reseller, which I hate. It was Benco. I don't care anymore. I'm very upset about it. Anyone can sell you the software. Nobody can hardly train you on it. I called them. I said, can you install it at least? They said, we don't install it. We just sell it. So then I had to find someone to even install it. And I called exocad back. I'm like, hey, like, who's going to train? They're like, oh, we don't train. Like, you have to find it. So I watched like videos on YouTube in like different languages. I hired at one point a translator because I was using a foreign trainer at one point. For it. And then I got in touch with a company called Evolve. They were a lab that were willing to train, but it was like very basic, but it wasn't what I wanted to do in cosmetics, like virtual crown lengthening and like all that. So then I would just click on every single button in the software and write down what it did. And I did that for hours and months. And then the company had heard there was a dentist that was doing that. And they probably thought I was half crazy, which I am. And so then they reached out and they said, do you want to do a webinar, show dentists what you're doing? And I kind of just wanted to show my friends at first, like, because my friends were asking and I was having them come down, but it was really hard to train them because I don't have an extra computer with the extra software. So I was like, can you guys bring me some, like, a computer or software so I can help people learn it? And they said, you know what, Diana, if you can get 10 dentists in a room, we'll bring 10 computers and you can show them your workflow. And that's kind of how it started. And it's been really nice because I get to meet dentists like you guys, like dentists who are high quality dentists who have been through COIS or SPEAR or Pinky, and that it's just such a certain way they want to set up a case, and they just don't get that maybe preliminarily from their lab, and it's a lot of back and forth. And now it's just a really good communication channel to have, you know. So that's
well, and honestly, we were talking before the show, but setting cases up. And Jeff and I particularly have talked about this with COIS. Setting those cases up with your lab is one challenge. Setting those cases up with your specialist is a whole extra challenge, because if they haven't gone through COIS or they don't understand how you see cases and how you process things, or what the long-term consequences of these decisions are going to be, because you see the patients for another 20 years. like exocad could be a pretty significant conduit to start to open up those conversations for improving how they see your case. And, you know, if you can show them, well, look, I'm doing the wax up on the 7 and 10 peg lateral case that you're setting up. Look how it's looking so far. It's not great. Can you make these adjustments? Instead, all I have right now is a patient comes in, and I've at least gotten to the point where I'm like, let me just start let me just start doing temporary composites on you so I can get closer, so that at least the orthodontist has visualization, right? 3-dimensional. And so are you seeing that with your specialists as well, like an improved level of communication?
Yeah. And you know, the really crazy thing now is I'm kind of their go-to person when they get a patient and the patient is like a little iffy about something. Should I do ortho versus restorative? My orthodontist will say, you know what? There's this girl down the road. She will mock this all up for you digitally. She'll show you what it looked like if you don't go through ortho versus if you do. And then you can come back to me and decide. And the same thing with my surgeons. Like, so now I've become like, now they refer to me. And outside of that box, I actually get a lot of plastic surgeons and derm that refer to me. My plastic surgeon in the area uses the same face scan I use. So we can actually dual treatment plan cases. So he'll do like the Vectra as the face scan, and he can do the virtual rhino and the facelift. And then I can plan the veneers around that so that we can do patient presentations together. So that's been, the communication was something I initially started just because of me referring to them, but because they saw how like efficient it is and how like, you know, finish line is the starting point. Now they'd almost rather me do majority of their cases. You know, they almost, and it's funny because my orthodontist, she's like, you know, Diana, I always feel so bad when I get a referral from a general dentist and they're about to go back to them to do their cosmetics. And I just know like what they're going to get versus if they go to you, but it's like, you can't be that specialist that only refers to one person, but a plastic surgeon can. Plastic surgeons don't give a shit. Like part of my language, they don't need to send to 15 different dentists. My plastic surgeon says, I just want to send to the best. So it is what it is, you know? So plastic surgeons and dermatologists outside of our field of dentistry, they don't have to split it with they don't care. They're busy enough as it is. One of my plastic surgeons actually has on his intake form this big image of a body and then a zoomed in of a face and says, highlight things you don't like about your features or things you often find yourself filtering in a photo. And teeth is one of those features they note in their intake form. So if the patient writes teeth, they give them the referral to my office. So there's a lot of ways outside of the box you can actually make this, you know, work, you know.
That's so intelligent. Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff. Go ahead.
No.
I was going to say that's so intelligent because how many times have you done a smile makeover where you were like, wow, this looks fantastic, and the reaction from the patient isn't quite what you think it's going to be? And because some of the critique of their own, you know, visualization is it's really their lips, their nose, their asymmetries or whatever. And you're only a tooth guy. And so you're like, well, I mean, the teeth look great, but you know, maybe there's other things. I love the synergy between the plastic surgeon kind of creating a visual image of what they want, and maybe help manage expectations a little bit better too.
Definitely. And I think it tied itself pretty well with accreditation, because as I was learning all the nuances that make a smile like ideal, I was learning how to do that in the software, like mirroring a tooth. So they're really big about 8 and 9 have to be like twins. Okay. So when you get a patient that 8 and 9, you don't know even width wise, you can mirror a tooth in the software and you can tell them right away, like, listen, this tooth is wider than the other one. So we probably are going to have to incorporate both to idealize this, you know, the width to height ratio, or it's going to leave us with a gap and we may need to close that with a bonding on the lateral. So a lot of things that I missed before digital or before accreditation, now I bring them in together and we talk about all this in the beginning, you know, uneven gum heights, all this stuff. And I can show them virtually. And I could, you know, it's 2023, more likely than not, they've already maybe seen a digital mock-up, a 2D image through some sort of outsource with another dentist if they were looking for a second opinion. But never have I had a patient walk in and say that they've seen a 3D image with it. And that's the really nice thing about exocad is I can show them functionally. You know, we don't use the word motivational mock-up at my practice. We say functional mock-up, because I need to see, is this going to function? Like whatever these veneers are, can you functionally handle, like, does your bite accommodate for the length? Do I need to open it? Do I need to bring in a deprogrammer? So they can see that in the software, because it'll highlight any interferences, whether it's going to be an MIP or if it's anything with dynamic occlusion. So bringing in the virtual articulator. So they start to own up to the problem, and they kind of start to see this more as like a medical treatment than as a novelty. And now we're logically driving the treatment plan. We're not emotionally driving it to yes, you know. So
would you please, because I just love the way that you talked about your transition, would you just share, like, you said, I believe, that you got exocad before you even had a scanner.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Share, because that's a big question that people have. You know, where do you go in digital? Tell us.
Not my way. I'll tell you that.
Well, no, but I think it's important to hear your way, because it, you know, people understand there's other ways about it, but how did you do it? You know, what's the steps that you integrated technology in, and how would you do it now?
Great. That's a good question. And that's a question I actually get a lot, is where do I start? I want to go digital, but where do I start? So how did I start? I was dumb. I didn't know. Again, I was very naive. I wanted exocad because I just wanted the control of the design. And the software company asked me, what scanner do you have? And I said, I don't have a scanner. So they asked, well, how are you going to design? What was your plan here? And I said, I guess I would take an impression, send it to my lab, have them scan it in, and then send it to me. And they're like, that's not very efficient, sweetheart. And then they're like, and then after you design it, like, what's your plan then? I was like, I guess I'll send it back to the lab and they can print the design. They're like, this is not how it goes. So I'm glad I had that conversation with them. But the problem for me was more the cost. You know, it's so, it can be very expensive to get into this space if you don't do it in a smart way. So I bought the software, and that same afternoon I bought a printer off eBay. It was the Moonray printer. It was the old Sprint Ray model. It was $500. And then I had a friend who had just bought Itero, an Itero scanner through Zimmer. Zimmer was actually partnered in with Itero, and they were selling it, and they were giving you like financing, and they also gave you a free surgical kit and free implants. And so I actually sold the surgical kit on eBay and got some money back, and then I was able to finance it. So
JB, I'm getting the whole scrapper thing now, by the way.
Yeah. And I'm taking notes. I'm over here like, that makes sense. Yep.
Because I wasn't, you know, my thing is, I wasn't ready to spend all this on something I didn't even know I was going to be able to, how I was going to use it. That was a lot of cost intake. I had just bought the practice. We had just opened up after COVID. Like, to me, it was so insane. But you know, luckily it kind of all worked out. So how would I start? I would start obviously with the scanner. You need the intake. You know, you're going to have to capture data. Most of us have a DSLR camera. If you don't, you should get one. I mean, 100%, not just for exocad, because you can, you know, facially design your cases, but nothing will tell you how bad of an effing dentist you are except a DSLR camera. Like, it's just, nothing will humble you more. Like, so, and you know, Adamo, he'll tell you how crazy I am. I asked Adamo, how big is the screen that they judge accreditation cases on when you guys are in the examination room? And he said it's 80 inches. And I went and I bought an 80-inch TV, and I would put my cases on an 80-inch TV to see what it would look like on an 80-inch TV, because that's how, like, it wasn't that I was crazy. I was just so worried about what people would say about my dentistry. It was the first time.
Did you buy the TV on eBay too?
Yeah. Actually, my dad was trying to give me his like 72-inch from my parents' house. My mom's like, don't give me that. But I'm like, Dad, it can't be 72. It has to be 80. You don't know what those extra 8 inches might hide, you know? So.
Oh, he does. He does.
So then I would definitely start with a scanner. That is your plug and play. Something you can train even the least tech savvy assistant in your office how to use. And I say that because my office, everybody in my office is over 65 years old, or they were when I was at this point in my practice. Everybody in my office was over 65. They barely knew how to attach a PDF to an email. So I was doing it all. So I would start with the scanner, and then your printer is going to be your next purchase, because there's enough design services now that are a little bit quick, you know, so maybe not like within a minute, like I could do it in the software, but maybe a day turnaround time. for a wax up. Or with night guards, they have AI night guards now, so they can design a night guard for you in a couple minutes. So that makes sense. And once you master that and you believe in the technology and you have found the space for it in your practice, and I don't mean like the physical space, but like the emotional and mental space to incorporate it, then you start to play with the design part of it. And I used to say a long time ago that I would categorize dentists into 3 categories in the digital. Like, you know, you have your beginners who have your scanners and your believers who got the printer. And then I used to say that the beasts were the ones who could design everything in-house, but I don't believe that anymore. I think a beast is somebody who knows when to design it in-house and when to outsource it. Like, you have to have a balance. You'll go crazy if you try to do it all in-house. So.
You know, it cracks me up because I talk about digital dentistry and I talk about, you know, that to get a 3D printer, everybody thinks, okay, I've got a scanner, I can get a 3D printer. Everything's so much easier, but people miss that missing link of exocad. You're the first person in the world I've noticed that have met that actually just decided, I'm going to buy the missing link first, and then I'm going to figure out where to take this. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't have a choice, Chad. I fired my lab that sent me the digital wax up. So I was like, crap, I better design this myself. I just fired my lab from this. I was so angry at them. But it's funny because I remember telling them I feel cheated. And then when I learned everything the software can do, I'm like, oh, this is not cheating. This is not being cheated at all. Like, this is worth more because there's so many great functions to like what I can do now. And not just, you know, we talk about lab communication, specialist communication, but patient communication to me was the most important. And that is really a big draw in our practice now. Our patients, like, we have, my digital room is actually set up in the middle of the office, right? When they walk in from the waiting room, it's like a big neon glow room, and they see all the printers and the mills, and they're usually always going off. And they're always like, what's this? What does this do? You know, now they know because they've seen enough of like me lecturing and the articles and like that. But before, they were like, you know, inquisitive. And patients love technology because they feel like you are investing into their care, you know? And now patients ask about 3D print. They already know what a 3D printer is. Before, it used to be like, what is this? What is this? Now they're like, oh, you have 3D printers. You have 6 of them. Why do you have 6 of them? What's happening? You know? So this is like a huge benefit for the patients. And that was kind of why I really started it. I didn't really think about anything else at that point.
So if I can, I'm going to blow your head up a little bit here, like those guys did to me earlier, but maybe even a little bigger, because what I find so inspirational about what you have done is really the fact that you came into it a pretty young dentist, new practice, and said, I'm willing to make investment in technology. I'm willing to make investment in my education. And Amanda was very much the same. Amanda C., when we talked to her, she's like, I don't care if I have to take a loan out. I'm going to go learn this. This is the kind of dentist that I want to be, and I'm going to make the investments that I need to make. And when I said scrapper before, like JB, that was such an endearing term, because you do what you need to do to survive in business and make the investments that you need to make to become a better version of yourself, to become a better dentist. And what you have done in such a short time is a complete testament to the fact that you were willing to make those investments and take those small risks. And so, you know, this is really what I want a lot of people to take from this, because I can't tell you how often I hear, well, I'm having to compete with them down the road. I'm having to compete with the Aspens and the, forgive me, I shouldn't have mentioned the name. I have to go, JB, at what point do we need to cancel?
9:23.
Call
15 seconds. Mark, cut.
Right, Mark. No, everyone says, you know, I'm competing with all these other people. I'm like, you don't have to compete with anyone when you provide the kind of care that you're providing. And the fact that you were willing to make those investments at the time that you did, and even with some sacrifice, look at what a short period of time it's been. and where you are right now. And I want everyone listening to this, if you're not watching us tonight, if you're listening on podcast, to understand you've got to invest in yourself. You've got to invest in technology. You have got to invest in your education. So I'm just blowing your head up, because what you've done in this period of time is a testament to the fact that you were willing to take those risks and willing to invest in yourself the way that you did.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, when I bought the practice, I think the thing was I was trying to find a way to build trust with patients. And for me, one was, investing in the type of dentistry that I should be doing, because I remember I bought a Pinky practice. So he was already at this exceptional level of comprehensive dentistry, and I was not there. And also I felt that the digital, these, showing patients mock-ups would be a way to, provide a little level of trust of what it may look like instead of guessing. Because before I was guessing, and I wasn't a good guesser. If I was a good guesser, I wouldn't be here. I'd be in the Bahamas, retired, making big money off blackjack. I'm a terrible guesser. So I think the thing is I pulled all the guessing out of dentistry for me, and everything now is on predictable results, and the starting point of that. And Kois has a lot to do with that, because he teaches you how not to do it wrong. And I was doing it wrong for so many years. And so I appreciate you for saying that. It didn't happen. Like, it wasn't like, I kind of had to put this under, like, I just buried my head in the sand and I had to get through it kind of thing. But it was just a lot happening at once. And the thing is, I had a lot of great mentors, and I think mentors are so important. And you have to find people who are in the position you want to be in a couple of years, and you have to really cling to them. So Adamo was that for me. Adamo embodies everything like I would want to be, not just in a dentist, but in a human and as a person, and I saw how giving he was to other to other dentists, even during COVID, he was doing lives and trying to show people. And it's like that was what set me, like Jen had said, you went and helped other dentists. And I thought, Adamo does that. He goes and he helps everybody anytime he can. And I wanted to be that kind of person to people. There are people who know exocad very well, and I've tried to, collaborate with them, but they didn't even want to help me. They don't want to help. They want to keep that. Now they're popping up everywhere, and they're seeing that they can monetize on it. But I think the thing is, mentorship is a two-way street, and we're all learning this together. Like, you would be a jerk to come into the digital space and say you know everything about it, because it changes every day. So I think this is the one thing we're all a little bit, naive on, and we have to check our egos. And so I think I appreciate, I don't ever get a chance to sit down even to myself and say, wow, you really did it. But, so.
Well, and the other takeaway, Jeff, I would say, to piggyback on the other characteristics that you'd mentioned, was adaptability, and COVID really brought out doctors' adaptability in a business perspective as well as in a clinical perspective. And, I think it's a testament to that our careers are not stagnant, and that running a business cannot just operate on this flat plane. Like, you don't just get to a level of competency and then cruise to retirement. There's this constant evolution. And frankly, if you want to stay in business, that has to happen for the rest of your duration. Every other business operates that way. There is no flat plane where they exist in very stagnant environment. So I think she also highlights to us what it looks like to run a business, and to say, you know what? I don't like this on my bottom line. I don't like this overhead. I'm going to modify this, and I'm going to change it. Maybe in hindsight, I would have done it a little differently. Not me specifically, but, in reflection, to say, maybe a scanner first, then exocad. Yeah. I don't know, but you were willing to be risky and adaptable to say, I don't like this impact on my business. I can do better, and I'm going to do better. And then you figured it out. However you got from point A to point B matters not to me.
Yeah. And the truth is, some people had the same journey I had, but they realized it's not worth their time. And that's a fair assessment. I love the dentist that can come to my course and say that. People think, oh, what do you want them to? No, because if that dentist is honest with themselves and they say, like, this would not work in my practice, practice. I'm a heavy insurance-based practice. I don't have the time, or I don't see these kind of cases, even though I would argue you can do digital for anything. But a lot of them don't even have the time to design their own crowns or do CEREC. And I respect that completely. But they came and they saw, is this something before you throw all your money in, you know? So
absolutely.
Like,
when's the next course? Because now that everybody's listened, they want to come here, see,
yeah,
learn.
so we're the Party City traveling course. So we go back down to Miami Beach in June and September. And then we usually do level 2 in the Bahamas. We'll usually do it in January. And then we go to Vegas once or twice a year. So the next one goes June in Miami Beach. And then we will be in Miami Beach again in September. Now, I do COIS as well. I do those courses at the COIS Center. They are in October and April. There's a waiting list, as it always is with COIS. But so that's where we're at right now.
I sense a trend. I think that this mention of winning at the tables in the Bahamas is actually a reality, a dream of yours.
Yeah.
Since you go to the Bahamas, and then it just happens you go to Vegas next.
Yeah. I always tell my office, if they don't act up, I'm going to sell the practice for $1. I'm going to retire in the Bahamas, and I'm going to be done with it. I'll be selling pina coladas in a tiki hut or something.
Yeah, well, let me
Monte
tell you
Carlo,
something.
2025.
Don't do that to us.
Can't afford it, but hey, you're just an inspiration to so many. I think it's
Thank you.
Great.
As are you guys. So thank you for having this shared knowledge. And I think this is kind of what dentistry is all about, or what I hope it is all about, so.
Yep.
It makes it fun, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And
just
I
meeting like-minded people and talking about what makes us better.
And I think that was kind of the biggest thing for me on why I got so hooked on CE and teaching these courses is when I was in Manhattan, I had a lot of like-minded dentists in the area. When I moved to Fort Lauderdale, there was no COIS dentist. There was no accredited cosmetic dentist. There was nobody I knew that I could reach to for digital. So I felt like a little lone man on an island. And that's why I clung so much to these courses, because I would meet dentists like COIS dentists. And it was just so neat to have that community, and now we're this big network, and with social media, you're always connected. So that's great. But CE is just important, not just for our education, but I think also for our mental health and for our camaraderie and community. So.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Well, Jeff, JB.
Let's close it out. Diana, thank you so much. You are the reason that that I stay excited about dentistry is watching this next generation of people who are just taking it to a completely different level. And it just makes me so excited because, it's not always easy when you watch people that really do just go through, the typical career path of saying, okay, like JB said, I'm just going to go, I'm going to make a good living, which we all do, and then just retire, sell my practice, and get out. It's really making a contribution, and not just making a contribution to your patients, but making a contribution to education and exciting the next generation of dentists. Mm-hmm. I know it's hard for you to see at your age, but the generation of dentists that are behind you. So thank you for what you're doing. It was great talking. I mean, we have so much more to do together. So so much we want to talk to you about.
We'll do round 2 at symposium.
Yeah. And I promise that I'm actually going to be one of the next people sitting in your course, because there's a lot that I need to learn about digital design and how to incorporate all these technologies that I've put into the practice. And
great. Now she has to increase her presentation to the 45 font.
Yeah. It's okay. I'll bring my glasses.
There, I'll bring my glasses.
I'll give you a confidence monitor, your own little monitor.
Oh, there you go, Jeff.
There you go. All right. Well, Diana, thank you so much. Thank you to all of you for watching and listening. And guys, 5,000 podcast downloads. as of this week. So thank you all for listening to us and watching us, and let's all just keep pushing dentistry forward. Have a good night, everyone.
Have a good night.
Yes, thank you very much.
And that wraps up another podcast for Dentists in the Know. On behalf of Dr. Jennifer Bell, Dr. Chad Duplantis, and myself, remember that we've got a great profession, so let's make it a great day, Dinks.